Very good, and thank you. And you just heard that this meeting is being recorded so that you'll be able to watch this later if you miss any parts of it. We welcome you. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you happen to be. Thank you for joining us. With us today to talk about transitioning your workflow and trying to be more efficient are three professionals who have joined us today. Gretchen R. Crowe is Editorial Director for Periodicals at OSV, where she oversees the publication of Our Sunday Visitor, the only national Catholic weekly newspaper in the United States. She also oversees content of The Priest, The Deacon, and Takeout magazines. I assume Takeout magazine is not about how to order food during the pandemic. And Simply Catholic and Radiant Online. An award-winning writer and photographer, Crowe has been a member of the Catholic Press Association since 2005. She is the author of two books, Why the Rosary, Why Now, from OSV in 2017, and Praying the Rosary with St. John Paul II from OSV in 2019. Crowe lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with her husband and two children. Gretchen, wave, so people can see.
Thanks, Chris.
Cassie Magnotta is Art Director for Glenmary Challenge and a freelance graphic designer. Prior to her work in Catholic media, she was designer in the music industry for 10 years. Cassie approaches design as ministry, believing that every project, large or small, can help others experience the beauty and richness of God's love and the Catholic faith. And Kilian Schalk, an expert in workflow design and implementation for PurpleGray Consulting, helps editorial content creators adapt to a changing world. He's been a popular speaker at the 2019 CMC. He led the Moonshot effort to transform America Magazine into America Media, guided the transition to content-first workflows at OSV, and helped Glenmary Challenge find new opportunities in its processes. Previously, he was managing editor for editorial development at Condé Nast, technical director of digital projects at The New Yorker, and the youngest production manager in Rolling Stone history. So welcome, Gretchen, Cassie, and Kilian. Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your being here. Don't forget to use hashtag CMC Virtual when you're posting or sharing about the conference. We would like you to make sure that you keep us posted on that. And I'd like to just very briefly give a shout out to our presenters here, who are to our not our presenters, I'm sorry, but to our sponsors. And it's not giving me the privacy to do that, unfortunately. There we go. Sorry about that. And we'll have to do that later. Tim, maybe you can share that from your end, because unfortunately I'm on a new computer today and I did not test this from there. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chris. We have 7 sponsors who have underwritten the technology costs of our conference. They are Our Sunday Visitor, Faith Publishing, Diocesan, which you might think of as My Parish app. We also have Missio and Knights of Columbus and EWTN as well. So great thank you to them for making all this possible.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that, and we appreciate the sponsors. So don't forget, you are muted. Ask any questions in the chat, and we will try to get to them as we go along. There also will be opportunities for you to ask questions to the specific presenters as they do their portions, and we'll have a little bit of some polls for you to see as well. So don't forget, drop your questions in chat, make comments there, and we look forward to getting that engagement going. But without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Gretchen and have her present for us the first portion.
Gretchen,
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go for it, Kilian.
Got it.
Okay, sorry, I got the order wrong.
No problems at all. So, does everyone see my screen? Is everything all good?
We do.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. To start off, I thought that we would first find out a little bit about everyone here and want to break the ice. So we have a poll we would like to ask. What is your favorite ice cream device? So if the poll could be loaded up and we could all run a trial, please. All right.
Is this where we play the Jeopardy music and you get 30 seconds to answer? I think, is that?
I'll hum that the first 3 bars, and everyone will cringe, and then I'll stop. But I'll keep on.
Okay.
Do 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 do.
This feels a little too much like the USCCB conference.
Yes. We're voting for new officers and new committee chairs.
Okay.
And we're going to end the poll.
Yep.
Thank you. Ice cream cone is the winner.
All right.
I'll take it in any container. I really do.
I'm a huge fan. So today's presentation is about transforming workflow. And I want everyone to discover what happens when you rethink your workflow. So we're going to do another poll. It is my primary responsibility to, please, everyone answer.
It's got the wrong question on here.
Yeah. Okay. Which question does it have?
It's got, we are a diocesan national religious.
Okay. So it's the same question. If you just use we are a,
Oh,
work your way through, it's fine.
okay, sorry.
No, it's that's not your problem. That's my problem with my slides. So it's all good. Okay. Chris, how are we doing?
All right. I think we're done.
Okay. What do we see?
So we're seeing 65 at diocesan publication, 53%. 22% are on the communications team, 11% at a national publication, 6% at a religious community, 2% freelancers, 1% parish members, and 4% none of the above.
Okay. Interesting. My organization has, how many people do you have in your organization? Do, 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 do. So Chris, are the questions coming in quickly?
They are, it's telling me 88% have voted,
Wow. Okay, great.
9%,
Wonderful.
and a couple more seconds for those 9% left to join, to vote, or not.
All right, Chris, go for it.
All right. So we have more than 25, 33%, 2 to 5, 28%, 6 to 10 people, 22%, 10 to 25 people, 15%, and 2% have only one person in the organization.
Okay, that helps us understand. This one I'm very curious about. Oh, I think we have the wrong one.
Wrong poll, sorry.
It's okay, it's okay. I can switch to, go to the, can you go to the poll? We create most of our web content.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, we're not in the correct order, sorry.
No worries. Problems with our slides, not with the polls.
Yep.
How quick? So what are we at?
We're at 85%. That's probably close enough. We got a couple more seconds. We'll give it a few. Both 61%, 20% from scratch and 19% from print files.
Okay, that's interesting. It's a nice little bell curve. It's what I thought might happen. Wonderful.
I'm going to take a few seconds to admit a few more people to the
Okay.
room. Okay,
What's
and
the,
next poll.
yep.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
All right, what are we at?
66% say their work process has changed. 30% has not. And 4% don't know.
No. Okay, so we're probably looking at 5 or 6 people don't know. Okay. That's
5.
what
Yep.
5. So, poll results. What happened? Oh, I'm sorry. My machine is just going back and crazy. No matter what the poll results are, the thing I wanted everyone to know is the following. It doesn't really matter what you all are working on, how many people are there, how many there. I mean, I hear that there are small groups, there are large groups, there are all the different groups. But there's one thing that you all need more than anything else, and that's time. So when I've worked with other groups, the thing that I have been able to do is help groups find time. And that is something that you all have in common. And this is also something that Glenmary, OSV, and all that we worked with have in common. And if you were at last year's session, you would also know that we found ways to find time. And the question is, how do we get to those content first? Now, in the bell curve I described, 20% of you are working content first, are delivering for the web from scratch. And about 60% are doing both. Another 20% are still doing print to web. And so I want you all to think about how we can do these things differently. And so I'm gonna give you a little history about what you all print magazines have in common. So you start off with an idea, and then you go to edit. And you edit the idea, and you printed it. And that was the 1900s. In the 2000s, you started off with an idea, you edited it, you printed it, and then there was this idea that we needed a website. And so we took the content from print and put it into the web. And we discovered that there was a whole new way of working. And we said, oh, well, we're just going to convert the print to the web. But then there was a need for more web content than that was actually just in print. And so another group popped up where they created ideas, they edited it, and they went straight to the web. And what you're seeing here, the top and bottom, these two channels became the workflow for many magazines and many organizations. And it created a lot of overhead. And what I've been doing and what we've been doing with OSV, with America, with Glenmary, and many of you and many other organizations, is we now start with an idea, we go to edit, and we go to content. And people have different names for this. For example, America called this ready for publish, and everyone calls it slightly differently. But essentially, it's content first. And you go from idea, edit, content, and then from there, you take that content and you publish it into different forms: web, print, social, and any other forms that might be happening. And this is what America is doing. This is what OSV is doing. And this is what Glenmary is doing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what you're seeing here is the new way of thinking about it. In the 1900s, we started off just taking print magazines. That was our world. Occasionally, we did a few radio shows or TV shows, but mostly it was from idea to print. In the 2000s, we had two groups. We had one group that was creating web content, another group that was creating print content, and then web content from the print content. For any of you who have done this, and I did this at the New Yorker and many other places, it is a lot of labor to do this. This final version saves so much time that suddenly you have time to change and, more importantly, to think and take a break and breathe. And I'd like to share with you how this works. So we put content first. So American media, to tell the story about where it happened, this is a recap for those of you who were there last year at the CMC, St. Petersburg. They started off with this. Imagine all of us on 58th Street, with the 56th Street on the group of America editors putting Post-its on the wall. Every yellow Post-it is a process. Every orange Post-it is a challenge. And this is what the print workflow looked like, and this is what the web workflow looked like. And if you combined all this, the America team then came up with this. This is what they saw. And this was their first workflow. So if you remember before, the 1900, this here is 1900s and the 2000s. And this is their current reality and what they work with. And so this is an experiment that they came up with. So in January 2017, this is what it looked like. This was their new process. And by the way, January 2017 is also the time that America released their new magazine redesign. They released a new website. They had their biggest traffic day ever, and they also moved. And all of that because they learned how to work and how to build new workflows themselves. Recently, they've created new products. They've created podcasts. For example, Jesuitical, that was the first one, Vatican podcast, and now 6 others. I looked up last night and I was like, oh, there's new ones. They also have newsletters. There's 1 daily, 4 weekly, and 1 biweekly. When I was there was only 1 that was a weekly. So from 2016, 2017 to now, they are now creating that much more content and that many more podcasts. This is all new. And they also have America Films, which creates their videos, which I would highly recommend checking out. And recently, I noticed that America is now doing Jeopardy. I would encourage you to experience that. And they're also increasing revenue. They now have increased subscription memberships, where instead of subscribing, you're also a member of America, which increases revenue. Advertising is coming back. They have a classified marketplace where they're able to generate revenue online. By the way, classified marketplace is interesting because they're creating the people can sign in and would pay for the classifieds with a credit card. And then they take the print ones from that, which makes everything a lot easier. It's another form of content first. And they organize pilgrimages. And every year now, in Easter, they have the anniversary giving day. And this year, they raised, I think, $120,000. And it was quite an event. And finally, there's something I want to share with you that because of Content First and working, America, on 8th, you'll see on this Twitter message, they basically shut the offices down. Now, what Father Malone does not talk about here is that at this time, they basically all took their laptops and walked out the door. All that thanks to Content First and to transforming their workflow. But we're not here just to talk about America. We are here especially to hear OSV and Gretchen talk about how she does. So I pass the baton to Gretchen. Gretchen, please take it away. Should I stop sharing?
Yep.
Okay, all yours.
Thank you so much, Kilian. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay? All right, so that was great information about what America did, and I appreciate Kilian sharing that with us. My name is Gretchen Crowe, and I am, as Chris mentioned, from Our Sunday Visitor. And I just want to tell you a little bit about our story, switching to Content First. I'm going to start my part of the presentation in March 2020, just this past March, because as we know, that's when things changed for all of us. When the coronavirus pandemic hit and we were suddenly all working from home, the one thing that we missed the most at OSV was our office lunches. Okay, so that sounds really silly, but what I'm trying to say is that our workflow so seamlessly transitioned from office to home that the only thing we really missed and continue to miss is the camaraderie among our team members at places like Nick's Country Cafe, family restaurant, the finest in Huntington, Indiana. Come have the breaded tenderloin anytime you're in town. Everything else, though, went as smooth as clockwork. This is because we'd spent the year prior preparing not for a pandemic, of course, but for a change in workflow. Okay, so this is, I'm going to give a little example of kind of how, yeah? Can you hear me okay?
I'm only seeing the OSV screen. Are you seeing? Are you switching the screens?
I was, yes.
Okay, then it's
Do
probably.
you not see it?
Does everyone else see it? I'm sorry, maybe it's just my machine. Okay, John Pfizer is also not seeing it. Can you?
I'm still seeing the first slide.
Oh, okay, hang on just a second. Let me make sure
There
I
you go.
can get it right. What do you see now?
Screen. Yeah.
There you go.
Do you see it right?
Yep, now we see Nick's Country Cafe.
Nick's Country Cafe. Okay, we got to make sure we get our shout out to Nick's. How about now? Can you see it okay?
Wonderfully.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Wonderful. And I just changed again. Seeing it okay?
No.
I think you're probably previewing just the screen slide, so go back and use the present button at the top right.
Okay, I will try it again. Present. Back to Nick's Country Cafe now.
So now there you should have a button down there that at the bottom that you can forward or back.
Yes. You see it okay?
There you go. Now how we did it before, thinking in weeks.
Perfect. Okay. So OSV has been around a long time, and we were stuck in some antiquated habits, possibly like some of you. We continued to base our timetable around the print issues, which meant we were thinking in weeks. We were trying to break out of that mold, but everything about our entire system, we had a workflow system, a print-first workflow system called K4, which was very nice, very capable, but everything about it kept us in that weekly cycle. Integrated within that K4 workflow system was the Adobe suite that I'm sure many of you use in copy and InDesign. So writers and editors, because of what we were using, were tethered to their desktops and were, for example, copy fitting stories to the page before they posted online. So we weren't thinking content first, we were thinking again, print first. You know, we would have regular content meetings, but we were still planning issues. We weren't planning content based on daily events. We were doing a lot of work downstream in the process, which was both inefficient and it also was not enabling the people who were best suited to be able to do the work to do the work. For example, I'm going to give social media as an example. Our social media team member would have to read content that we had already edited, synthesize it, and write the posts. It was an inefficient use of her time, and that took away from her task of posting and sharing things on social media, and it put her more in the realm of writers and editors. We also, just by the way of our print-first thinking, we had longer turnarounds for writers because we were thinking by weeks. We said, you have 5 days to write a story instead of like 2 hours. And of course, that's not how the world works. So we were still thinking in terms of print first. So we knew where we wanted to be, but we couldn't quite get there. We just needed kind of that push over the edge. And we spent a lot of time looking for solutions that were way too complicated and way too expensive. I'm not going to go down that road. If you have some questions, you can ask me in the Q&A about all the things we looked at and tried, thought about, it just did not work for one reason or another. So then we heard Kilian's presentation with America at the CPA. I think it was over a webinar. And we were intrigued by what they had managed to do. And this brings me to a really important point that I want to stress, which is the positive collaboration among members of the Catholic press. It's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be able to help give this presentation today. I reached out to several people at America Media, and Carrie Weber in particular was very generous about walking us through what they had done and how it had changed their workflow. She also was able to give a recommendation for Kilian. She didn't have to do that, and we're really grateful that she took the time and was willing to do that. So a big shout out to the collaboration among the Catholic press members. I think it really means a lot. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to be here. I'm sure Cassie would say the same thing. So we knew where we wanted to be, but it required an entirely new way of thinking. So we engaged Kilian for 6 months, and this was really the key in helping us move forward and think differently. Now, this is not supposed to be an infomercial for Kilian, but in order to tell the story accurately about what happened, I have to say this part, because when we brought Kilian in for 6 months, he helped us kind of get the mindset of thinking differently. He empowered the team to come up with solutions that worked for us. He guided us without telling us what to do, which is actually a big deal. He helped us understand that we would be most efficient if each team member focused on what he or she did best. So as I mentioned before, if editors edit, writers write, designers design, we're all in our proper roles. Before I go on, I want to make sure to note something really important. We had hired Kilian for 6 months in April 2019, and I went and had a baby in May. So what I'm telling you, I'm not taking this as an excuse to show a picture of my daughter. What I'm telling you is that my team did all of this work independently. So it was team focused. It wasn't top-down driven with Kilian's guidance. And I think that's really, really important. So instead of my maternity leave turning into a problem or a hindrance in being able to develop a new workflow, our team-based leadership meant that my being gone just gave them the proper ownership over a process that really is theirs. For me, it underscored the importance of trusting my team members and giving them opportunities to succeed. So really after a couple of months, not even maybe, of Kilian working with my team, we were starting to think differently. We started to think in terms of content first instead of print first. So instead of thinking weekly, we're now thinking daily, even hourly, we're thinking content first. We changed some old habits that were comfortable. We have daily content meetings. We've retrained our writers to have shorter turnaround times, and we're using a lot of new tools that I'm sure are familiar to many of you, but the way that we were able to integrate them with what we were doing was new to us. So we now have a workflow that's based on content rather than method. We've changed our software to cloud-based, as I mentioned, rather than desktop-based, and we even saved money by completely eliminating our old print-first workflow system. So the cloud-based software that we're using, I think similar to America, we're using Google Docs, we're using Trello. We were initially using Slack, but we just migrated everything over to Microsoft Teams because OSV as a whole organization was integrated with Teams. And so we changed all of our integrations, all of our notifications over to Teams, but actually it wasn't as bad as it sounds. But it shows you that there's some flexibility within programs if your company is, or your publication is using something different, your diocese, et cetera, for example, is using something different. So other than design, which still really has to be desktop based, we are completely mobile friendly. And I don't just mean work from wherever you want mobile friendly. I mean work from your phone friendly, which I do quite often, especially working now full-time from home with 2 little kids. So all of the programs that we use are app-based, which means I'm able to write, edit, communicate, receive notifications, and follow the progress of the workflow all from my iPhone. My 13-month-old daughter will not nap alone. That means that I can take the hour and 15 minutes that I am holding her while she naps and be completely productive. And that's incredible. So our thinking has changed by moving from print first to content first. We now think in terms of universal application. So this process that we've implemented, we've created for our Sunday Visitor newspaper, but we've also adapted it as the new workflow for 4 other publications. We're also developing a workflow for book publishing. Using similar principles, we've revamped our entire newsletter process. We have 7 newsletters. It allows us to be more efficient and organized and therefore more productive. We think in terms of greater efficiency. We try to do as much possible now upstream instead of down, so that things are more efficient and that the people who should be doing the work are, and the people who shouldn't aren't. I'll go back to that social media example that I used earlier. Instead of Kathy D having to read through every story, synthesize its content, and write a post, The editors do that upstream in Google Docs, and all Kathy has to do is copy and paste, meaning that her time is much better spent sharing content and getting increased social engagement. We are also thinking in terms of diversified distribution, that we aren't creating content for print, but we're creating content for distribution in a variety of channels, many of which we've talked about already. We're thinking in terms of continuous improvement. We're always tinkering and trying to find new, more efficient ways of doing things. This is because technology is always changing, our needs are always changing, and sometimes you get hit with a global pandemic. We continue, depending on whatever's going on, to grow and to learn. We're now thinking in terms of empowerment, because we developed the workflow. If something goes wrong and we need to troubleshoot it, we have the confidence to be able to find a solution ourselves and in a timeline that fits our needs. For example, we don't have to be dependent on the IT department, which if there are any people from IT out there, we love you dearly, but you've got a lot to do. And so if we're able to troubleshoot our own workflow process, it's hugely, hugely helpful. It also gives the opportunity for managers to empower their teams and give people a chance to help, people on the team a chance to help the project move forward. It doesn't have to be top-led, it shouldn't be. We're also thinking in terms of flexibility, and this has turned out to be everything since the pandemic hit. We were off-site by March 13th, and we were completely functioning like nothing had changed because workflow-wise, it hadn't. So all of this has led to more content, additional products that we're able to offer, a greater brand awareness or relevancy because we get more content out sooner, increased subscriptions, and most importantly, what we're all here for and all about, a greater ability to live out our mission of service to the church and bringing people to Christ. It's been an incredible experience, and I'm happy to talk to anybody else about this at any point. This is just my contact information. If you're interested in following up, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the website. I should have put my email address on there. I'll put it in the chat. And with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and I think give it back to Kilian.
Kilian, are you up or are we just passing straight to Cassie? You're muted.
Kilian, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
We are staying with Gretchen because she has to help us answer some questions. So if people could use the chat to ask some questions, we're going to take this opportunity to ask Gretchen about her situation. So please put your questions into the chat button.
So the first question is from Aaron. Wants to know more about how this improves your response to the mission.
Oh, it's a great question. So we're very mission-centric at OSV. We want to make sure that we're able to respond to events and respond to what's happening to the church and in the world. And the only way that we're really able to do that is by being a part of the conversation, by teaching, by sharing what the church teaches and why, the church's perspective, and give analysis. And we can give analysis 10 days later, and we do in print, and that's very valuable for our print readers. We do hear that. But it's much more effective if we're able to give more instant analysis, be part of the conversation, be engaging on the issues as they're unfolding rather than a week to 10 days later. That helps us in our mission of sharing what the church teaches, sharing why the church teaches what it does, and helping us explain that and bring people to Christ that way. Thank you for asking that, Aaron.
One of the other questions that came up, and I had this question myself as you said it, you said writers can write, editors can edit, designers can design. Well, a lot of our shops are small. Writers have to also be editors and designers and photographers and things like that. How does this kind of workflow apply for those folks?
I think that it can similarly apply. It just keeps you more organized. It can keep you more efficient. It can keep you kind of in lanes rather than I write a story, I take a picture, and then I post it. You can have more of a workflow process. You can automate things a lot more. You can use technology to work for you in different ways, rather than thinking that everything has to be done manually. And I think that's really a big thing. I think there are solutions. What I really like about this approach is that it's not a one size fits all solution. That if what we've done at OSV fits our team of 7 people, but what works maybe for a diocesan would be different, or what works for a communications team would be different. I think what we're trying to do is just show you that the tools are out there and that this is possible, and that if you start to think about what your needs are and look at what the tools are and start trying to map out a workflow that would be efficient and effective for you, it doesn't matter what your team looks like.
And that just addressed actually a couple of questions about team size and how you do that adapt for smaller. So thank you for anticipating some of the questions that are in the chat. Mackenzie has a question about their concerns about using cloud-based systems because of security concerns. And I know that there are some dioceses that don't allow you to use cloud-based systems for those same reasons. But it seems to be slowing the workflow down if you're not using a cloud-based, if you're all trying to hit the server over VPN. Any thoughts on that from either you or from Kilian?
Kilian might be better to speak to this because we just did it.
My experience has been that editorial content, as much as we would like it, is not so critical that it requires the same level of security that other systems require in organizations. And the other advantage of working in the cloud is that it allows the editorial teams to manage their own process. So Gretchen gave a great example. One of the things that Gretchen is not sharing, which is that everything they're doing, they're building themselves. And themselves are the 7 editorial team members. They're building it themselves. And so having cloud, you can have security built in, you can have 2-factor with telephones, all those things. But you basically create a separate entity that is dealing with editorial content that is separate from the rest of the organization. Not having to do VPN, not having to do file-based systems, releases the whole team to be able to do new things and build new things on the fly. And then the editorial team's changes don't affect the overall security of the organization. The only thing that can be broken is the access to a story or two. And for all the groups I've worked with, it's never been an issue. Now, I'm not saying that Google is the only solution. Google is a great tool to learn from necessarily. There are many out there, there are open source cloud tools that you can use, which also have other securities. But what I have found over and over again is that if you use Google tools or use Office 365 or whatever you end up using, if it's cloud-based and your team can access it by a phone, they can actually accelerate their working and take care of the kids at the same time. And I would highly recommend that. Now, it's hard for IT, who's used to controlling everything. One of my clients, basically, the IT said, you know what? We don't want to deal with editorial content anymore. If you can take care of it and do it on your own, we have other things we need to worry about. And I think you might have a conversation with your IT department about what they need and what their biggest challenge is. And sometimes they don't really need to be building workflows. Not anymore. 20 years ago, yes. Now, not even really more. Sorry. That's my answer.
And I think that's an important point, that IT should be the tool and the people to help us use the tools rather than the ones who are driving it, because this is the way the system always has been. So that's Absolutely. An important point. Yes. One of the questions that came in is, are you able to produce more content in different channels with the same number of staff?
Yep.
Good. Short answer. How do you convince your staff to buy into transforming workflow? And how did you retrain writers for a faster turnaround on stories?
Well, I'll start with the latter question first. Since we work primarily with freelance writers, if they want a gig, they're going to have to turn the story around in the time that we're asking for it, and ideally, it means they're getting more money because they're turning in more stories. So that's kind of first things first. How do I empower a team? My team is incredible. They took the ball and ran with it. because I think part of it is what I was saying earlier, is that if you give them the opportunity to lead, if you give them the opportunity to be part of the process rather than have somebody tell them what to do, it makes all the difference in the world. So I was able to bring my team in and say, this is something that we would like to do to help all of us be more efficient and be better at what we're doing and help advance our mission more effectively. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. We have to figure this out together. And I think that makes all the difference.
Can I just add to that? Joy is watching our Sunday visitor figure things out. I'm telling you, when you see them working together and solving problems, Kathy D and the whole team over there, it's Scott, Richard, everybody. What was amazing is also the people doing the work know it the best. And when you start asking the people who are doing the work what they think is needed, and then the entire team supports their work, Gretchen basically enabled them and said, when you guys come up with a system, I will follow. I'm your leader perhaps, but in this situation, I respect your needs and your ability to understand the process. And in terms of engaging, everyone has the skills. And now technology is easy enough. So you have people who have done, you all know how to write, you all know how to edit content, you all know how to design. And now these tools, you don't have to rely on IT or anyone else to build the systems for you, you can. And when you can do it, you can build a system. And this is the other thing is, you might see the tools and say, oh, OSV does it like that, we should do it too. No, sorry. What works for OSV may not and probably won't work for you. What worked for America will not work for you. What worked for Cassie may not work for you. But the thinking that requires, how do you build a system that works for us and do the experiments to learn what works and what not, and so you prove that and let the people who are doing the work build the experiment and everyone else follows, that to me has been one of the most powerful things. I've learned that from working with the Catholic folks, with everyone here, and it's really been a joy. So I go along too long, but yes, Chris.
Thank you. We want to take a few more questions before we get to Cassie because we don't want to run out of time. But there's a couple of questions that kind of talk about how this applies in avoiding reverting to old instincts and kind of that we've always done it this way kind of thing. How do you do that? How do you avoid that?
Well, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what we're just talking about. When you empower your team and they can see what's possible, thinking in new ways, you don't want to go back to the old way. You see what you're producing and you see how effective it is, and you see that an article that you get in can be up on the web, edited, really well done in 2 hours. Why would you want to go back to the old way of thinking? So I think it kind of proves itself out as you do it. I don't know, Kilian, if you have anything else you want to add.
I'm going to share another OSV story. I'm really sorry, but we built, the OSV team came in, they built the workflow because of some scheduling issues and flights. It's a whole different story. From between 9 and 11, 9 and 10:45, they built a new workflow. Gretchen, I remember you were 8 months pregnant. You posted it took a picture of the new workflow. You posted it on Slack, and you all went to Mass. After Mass, I was in another meeting, and Scott Richard posted on Slack, and there was a conversation about posting something on the web, and I didn't really understand it. At 1:45, Scott Richard shared with his executive staff, hey, guys, look at this on the web. And they all looked at it and said, well, that's an editorial written by Gretchen. Of course, that's great, but what's the big deal? It says, this workflow was built 4 hours ago. That's what we're dealing with. When you have people who are empowered, they can build new workflows. Now, I can't promise everyone's going to have the same results at Our Sunday Visitor. That team is amazing. But I suspect that there are many amazing teams that are listening to this call. And I think that you all can take inspired by OSV's ability to think locally and figure out how to work things, if that helps.
Great. There are some questions here about how this applies to revenue, how you get revenue online versus in print. Scott Richard's been answering some of those in the chat. I would encourage you to look in the chat. The other thing that you can do before we end the session is go to the little 3 dots at the bottom of the chat and click Save the Chat. That'll save the chat locally for you, and so that'd be helpful for you to get some of this information. That'll be good to have that there. And with that, it looks like, let's see, just make sure we've answered all the questions. Oh, somebody does want you to share your Trello template for content management if you're willing to do that.
Can I call a audible on that?
Sure.
Go ahead and share the template if you want, Gretchen. It's up to you or not. But please, whoever's doing it, you should learn how to use Trello first and experiment with building something yourself first. Once you've done one, then come back and see what else everyone else has. Because if you just follow with someone else, you're not actually learning to learn. Sorry to jump in, but Gretchen, please.
Yeah, and I would actually underscore that with some other things that we've been talking about. I'm happy to share if anybody wants to see anything, but I think going and figuring it out on your own is what helps have your teams buy in. It's what helps you not want to go back to your old way of thinking. It's what helps empower your team. So I really do agree with Kilian that it's better to try to figure it out on yourself rather than get like an off the rack system or workflow, because it's going to be different for every organization, and you lose out on the deep satisfaction of trial and error, experimentation, figuring out what works for you in a way that really brings your team together and helps them want to stick with it.
And on top of that, there was a question about revenue. Many of my clients are consumer-facing organizations, and they are desperate for revenue. And what ends up happening is everyone's organizations need different kinds of revenue, different kinds of work, and all those kinds of things. And what happens is what worked for OSV will not work for you and will not work for that. But you can learn from the thinking. And the other thing that happens is that if you do it yourself, suddenly you can adjust it. If I came in and, for example, or any consultant came in and told you how to do your job and here's the templates, use this, use this, that would be great. 3 months later, 6 months later, after the consultant is gone or whoever's came in is gone, you can't build a new process because things have changed. 20 years ago, it would have been fine. You could have the same system for years. Your system is always changing. Gretchen, does your system change now? Even now, you switch to Teams, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I said. We're constantly kind of tinkering. And yeah, we got everything set up with Slack, and then our organization wide was switching to Microsoft Teams, and we were like, well, okay, and we did it.
So one of the questions here, and I just want to get to 2 more questions before we go on to Cassie. But one of the questions that's coming up is, how do you do, somebody wants to know the benefits of Asana versus Trello, or you going from Slack to Teams. Rather than talk about the specifics of those platforms, maybe you can address how you evaluate which tool is best for you. And I don't know if that's a Gretchen or a Kilian thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Or a Cassie thing.
Well, I would very quickly, because I want to get to Cassie's as well, experiment. Sometimes you have 2 weeks, you have 3 weeks, you have a 1 week for a free trial. I remember America actually, there was 3 different data softwares that they were working with, and they actually trialed all 3 for free as a team, and they all experimented as a group, said, these 2 weeks we're going to try this, the next 2 weeks we're going to try this, next 2 weeks we're going to try this, and they compared it. I don't even remember which one they used. What was important was the thinking about it.
Okay. And then the other question is, some people are saying, look, I already get enough email. Why do I also then need to go into Trello or Slack or whatever, or Teams and respond to messages there? Isn't that counterproductive to be in another place?
Can I answer that as well, Gretchen? Do you want me to answer, or you want to go?
Go for it.
Most of my organizations, if you do 10% Slack, 10% Basecamp, 10%, you're going to get overwhelmed. What ends up happening is you have to have your team commit to a couple of platforms and focus on them. It's not everyone's going to be happy, but you'll be much happier all using the same system. So for example, I've seen teams commit on Teams. I've seen teams commit on Slack, for example. I've seen teams commit to Google Doc. What you need is everyone using the same system, agreeing to work together. And if there's a couple of people who don't know how, we work with them to help them. But
very good
system that works. By the way, I've seen people use Slack. America reduced their email so much that the HR department had to email everyone, please read your email at least once a day, because they were not reading their email. Okay, so it is possible, and it reduces email so much because so much of email is wasted, and you don't know this until you try it. So for
Very good.
interpretation, chat. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's wrap up then and go to Cassie and take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
So Cassie, why don't you take? I'm going to stop my share, and it's all yours.
Okay, great. Hi everyone. Like they shared, my name is Cassie Magnotta, and I am the art director for Glenmary Home Missioners. I also do freelance graphic design. And let's see here, almost there.
Yeah, just the present button, you'll say it.
Great. Let's get started. Do we have time to do the poll?
Sure.
Do you think?
Poll is up.
Great. While we do that, I'll just share, let's see here. Yeah, just a little bit about my role in our group. Glenmary is a religious community of priests and brothers, and they are missioners to rural Appalachia in the South. So our team at Glenmary is pretty small. There were 3 of us when we changed our workflow. We've recently hired a 4th, but still pretty small. One of the goals of my presentation here, and all of us, all 3 of us, is this, that by the end of your presentation, we hope you feel encouraged that no matter how big or small your team is, or whether you are, you know, at kind of the end of some of these workflows, like me, I'm the designer, or whether you're an editor or manager kind of at the beginning of a workflow, you can implement changes no matter what step, what role you play. So let's see,
So it looks like the poll is about 62%, but it's taken people longer to do that. The 28% say they change the process when errors are appearing. That is followed by when readers want something new at 24%, when it doesn't work for me at 22%, when it doesn't work for the next person at 16%, and when my boss tells me to at 10%.
So the
And
bottom
there's
line
probably
is,
a percentage of who are kicking and screaming and won't change at all.
exactly. But just kind of just to summarize that, the bottom line is we all have different perspectives and different comfort levels of approaching any kind of change. All of our needs are different. So what was mentioned earlier, really what we experience as the best part of this process transformation that Kilian helped us with is that there's so many ways to do it. And really we can all shape it into a perfect fit for each of our needs. For Glenmary, we had several main reasons that inspired change. First of all, we love a good deal. The CPA's free consultation with Kilian after the work at home, stay home order this spring was absolutely the #1 reason we investigated making any changes. We didn't have extra money in the budget or extra time because we all wear so many hats. So without the free opportunity to learn, we probably wouldn't have prioritized the change. Secondly, we were inspired. We always have room to improve. So working from home opened the door for us to put into place the changes that we were thinking about, but weren't prioritizing.
Kilian had something he wanted to add.
Sorry, your screen isn't moving. Is it for me again, or is it your screen? Is everyone else seeing the screen?
The screen is there, but the slides have not moved.
Yeah.
Cassie, are you advancing the slides?
Are you seeing like #1, #2, #3?
We still see the poll. We still see the poll. So if you go down to the left side of the bottom of the screen, you should be able to click to advance to the next slide.
Is it advancing for you?
It is.
Yeah, it's not advancing for us. So you're probably looking at it in preview.
Yeah, so hit escape and then go to presenter mode.
Any better there?
We see. Still loading.
Click an arrow and see. Yeah, we love a good deal. There we go.
Okay.
We don't have to be afraid of change.
Let me make sure.
All right, so now we're seeing to live is to change and to be perfect.
Okay.
Is that where we need to be?
Yes, yeah. So this quote really says it best. And also, you know, this reminds me, in Matthew 5, Jesus instructs us to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect. And we know that's a tall order, but Jesus wouldn't give us a goal if it was unreachable. So, you know, definitely not saying any of us are perfect, but this is inspiration to me that I think we can all raise our expectations to do amazing and inspiring work. As Catholic communicators, everything we do has the potential to reflect the richness of our faith. So my dream and my goal when I'm working with, you know, any team is that people would see the work done by Christian and Catholic creatives and see something that's so special that it really opens a door for us to share that our inspiration really is from a divine creator, and that relationship with him is available to everyone. All right, did the slide advance the right way there? Okay. So with that in mind, that's our big vision, to be the light of the world. So the next step is to break that down into, you know, the very reachable, doable steps. This, what I'm sharing is a little bit more of the micro view, the insider scoop of how we took Kilian's advice to manage projects. Before we transformed our workflow, we were doing a lot of the same things that Gretchen and Kilian mentioned, where we were writing some content for digital use, but primarily it was very print focused. The designer, me, you know, I was doing most of the final edits, lots of copy pasting, lots of room for human error. We love working together at Glenmary, but we would be like looking over each other's shoulders a lot. It's just not very efficient. So some of the changes that we've made since transforming our workflow is that, you know, like mentioned before from Gretchen and Kilian, the people who are in charge of writing are doing the writing from start to finish. When the content gets to the designing, I'm really just focused on design instead of trying to help write like the titles or subheads or captions, which I used to do a lot of. And really, the other thing that hasn't been mentioned here, there's an inexpensive plugin that works with InDesign, where if you're using Google Docs, you can import the text directly or link the text into InDesign. And it works just like images. So as the text is updated, your little yellow triangle appears and you just update it, and the changes are automatic. So this is great because it puts the managing of the text into the hands of the writers of the text. And really, what else is great about this, and maybe this answers a little bit of the question of how do you encourage people to want to even do this, is that, you know, our gifts within a team are used more wisely. Just like, you know, we all know the song, we're many parts, but we're one body, from Romans 12. And even the line after that part of the scripture is so great. It goes on to say, you know, we're one body in Christ. Since we all have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us exercise them. Let those who prophesy, prophesy. Let those who are cheerful givers, let them give generously. So really that translates to us as communicators. Let's all use our talents to the best of our abilities. So those who design, let's focus on just designing, and let's do a great job with our design. The writers, same thing. Let's let them write, and let them write really well. Let's raise the bar on Catholic and faith-based communication and design standards in general. And when we do this, you know, the whole outside world is going to see great processes, joyful communicators, joyful workplaces, and want to be a part of it and want what we have. And also this is true even for people who are, if there's anyone working in secular media as a Catholic, you know, it's like what people say, we are a light to the world, not a light just to the church. So even if your content is not specifically Catholic or faith-based, the way you manage your work, yourself, and the quality of your work that is a witness to the people around you and everyone your work touches, really. So specifically what we did at Glenmary, when we were looking at transforming our workflow, we started with something small, a monthly 2-page print newsletter. And we did this because it was really low risk. So we could make some changes. If we hated it, we could stop. We could try something different. Just like everyone else, we weren't all 3 in our Glenmary team. We weren't all, we had different thoughts and opinions on what to do. So we just had to kind of choose one and move forward. We usually use like a hard drive computer file management in the office. Since working from home, we've started using Google Drive. We chose Google Drive primarily because it's free, to be honest, and it works. And just maybe to share a little bit in case anyone hasn't used it a lot, and actually I had never had a reason to use the Google suite very much. There is a little bit of a learning curve. So I would just encourage everyone to don't be tough on yourself, just try it. Learning anything new takes time. And if you're comfortable with Microsoft Office, it's probably primarily because most of us have been using the Microsoft Office suite for like decades. So Google Drive is not harder, it's just that it's different. So you can do it. So this screen that I'm sharing just shows, the file management within Google Drive is really easy, and it's similar to your kind of regular computer. And what we started doing is to create templates that would help us manage each project. So each project has a blank process template, and then we save a copy to be used for each specific recurring project. Here is a screenshot of the actual template. So this is kind of like a recipe, so to speak, for our for whatever we do that outlines every element required to complete the project. I'm the designer for Glenmary, and I did make this template, but the great part of this method is that really anyone could create something similar to this. You don't have to be the designer or the manager or the editor. In doing this, it makes it very transparent what everyone's roles are. And if you're trying to, what we started with also is, what's our current workflow? What's everyone doing? The places where we weren't sure how we did something, even though we do the same project month to month, those were areas where we thought, okay, this is where we need to tighten things up. Let's make it more efficient. And really, it's helped us just understand what we do better instead of kind of asking questions every time over and over. And really, the better communication we have, the better projects we have, and it all goes back to the end goal. The mission of the church, evangelization, sharing God's love with the world, it's all going to increase when we do a better job with our products. We include all the elements we need. So it's quotes, the actual article content, ideas for the images we want to use, due dates, sent to printer dates. We put it all in the same. We put it all in the same document. We also include any element that we would need for an email newsletter, social media posts, if you're using it for an app, all of that. So that's that content first. When we did the single page newsletter, we had a lot of success. When our template was complete with all of the text, we can put together a 1-page newsletter front and back from start to finish. I can have a final draft in an hour, maybe less. So it was really successful. I think we felt great about it internally at Glenmary. So we applied the same idea for a small project to our larger project. We do a quarterly 20-page magazine, and we created a template, and it was also successful. What usually takes us probably at least 2 weeks to create a layout and kind of, we have to copy fit every article, etc. We put this together start to finish in less than a week. And the editing process was also way faster because the text was super tight, since the writers were, they were copy fitting based on a character count before it came to me. And we did that with the main article text as well as the captions. So it was extremely efficient. Actually, managing the larger project is exactly the same as managing a smaller one-page project. It's just kind of a one big workflow made up of smaller workflows. We added in all the details, even if they seem silly, like how are we as a team going to name all of our files? Small things like that can really make a difference in making your workflow more efficient and reducing some of those emails that are like, where's this file? What's it called? Or is this the right version? So, you know, it's cut down on the time we spend doing things that aren't like the best part of our job. Also, I think that we really created a positive team morale when people feel like they are doing a good job. And as a team, we want to make it easy for everyone to succeed. So having a clear process where everyone knows what their role is and when they're accountable to have it ready for the next person, it makes it really easy for someone to hit the mark. If someone misses something, like if they're, you know, from my perspective, that's like if the character count is really off or something, instead of me thinking, oh, did they even think about this? You know, all I have to say is, oh, hey, here's what our template says. It says this amount of characters, you know, yours is off. Can you edit it before passing it forward? So it takes out a lot of the negative emotion. Not that we had a lot, but you know what I'm saying. The colored arrows on this slide show how our process workflow translates directly to a magazine article. So each element on the right is completely finalized based on the character count by the author of the article or the editor. And then I place that into a visual, a layout. And from the designer's perspective, this is so much, this really helps to create a better project. I sometimes relate design to decorating a living room. So you can do like your best decoration if you have all of your furniture and all your pieces to start, because you balance the room and it looks really nice. But then as soon as people start saying, oh wait, can we add in this rocking chair and this big TV stand and then this special lamp or footstool, before you know it, there's all this kind of mix match or, you know, disorder. So it really helps the design to have all the elements required before the layout begins. And really what we all want is to create the best product possible. So that's very helpful. So we've had so much success at Glenmary using this template, you know, or we have some other fun names like paint by number project management or recipes for our projects, that we've started using them even outside of our communications department. So they'll be a little bit different because, you know, not everyone's going to be as communications oriented as we are. But it helps people who aren't designers or aren't even communications people to understand what the scope of a project they're requesting is. And really, if someone else can design their project at the top more accurately, it helps us implement it better in the communications department. We also, just as a team, we are talking a lot more. We use Google Hangouts, probably because our Glenmary team is kind of small. There's only 4 of us chatting. So we did try Slack. We didn't really need all the bells and whistles that it offers. We also tried Trello. But what we found is, I think because right now our team is still on the smaller side, our Google Docs workflow that includes, you know, with Google Docs, you can have comments and you can communicate through it. We didn't need a Trello and the template. So for us right now, this is working. We're still kind of young in the process, but it did help us to try to narrow down how many chat channels or how many calendars are we trying to keep. So trying to just start with one or two things and do those things really well was helpful for us. I've also even started using some of these concepts for freelance work. Having Google documents that you can share and help as you're passing projects back and forth, it's so much clearer than relaying everything on email. And then sometimes the email chains get so long, you can't keep track of everything. So yeah, we're so pleased. In summary, I'll end with a quote from my favorite saint, Mother Teresa, of course. I can do things that you cannot, and you can do things that I cannot. Together, we can do great things. And I really believe this is possible for all of us. I'm happy to keep in touch and offer any more insight or encouragement to anyone interested. And thanks again to the CPA. Glenmary wouldn't be where we are without these opportunities. So we feel very blessed.
Thank you very much, Cassie. We appreciate that. We are getting some questions in. A couple of people are asking about getting some training and getting some basic training, and I want you to stay tuned until the end because Tim Walter will be talking about some opportunities for that, and so we want to make sure that we stay on top of that. But in terms of other questions that we're getting, we do have a question. If you have freelancers using different, oh, hold on.
That's me, sorry. Sorry, guys.
Screen changed. If you have freelancers who are using different systems, not necessarily the full Microsoft suite, can you still use Microsoft Teams? Or do you have to have the suite to use Teams? Or is Google simply more accessible because it's free and for other reasons there?
Go
ahead, Kilian.
Well, Cassie, I think what you've seen from both Gretchen and Cassie, and you see if you talk to America and talk to anyone, everyone's situation is different. And it's better, I try not to talk about tools in these sessions because your situation will be different. What I do encourage you, and I said this in the chat, experiment, try something. And by the way, when Cassie started this, I had no idea she was going to build templates the way she did. I had conversations with Tim and I was just sharing with everyone like how amazing what Cassie was doing. And that's the advantage of letting people come up with their own ideas and not be preconceived notions. So instead of me saying, this is what you should do, Cassie, here's some principles, here's some ideas, see what you can do. And that was inspiring. And that's one of the main reasons we wanted Cassie to be part of this, because hearing Gretchen and hearing Cassie together is kind of like a full picture as to what's possible. And I'm grateful that you presented, Cassie, and this is going to make a big difference to a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Can I just jump in and say something real quick about the tools and Kilian not wanting to talk about the tools? We had the exact same questions. We just wanted to know the tools and implement the tools, and you know, it would have been, we thought it would have been much better. And Kilian kept harping, well, you've got to figure out your own way, and you've got to figure out the things that work right for you, and that's annoying to hear at the beginning. It was annoying for us, and but I think after having gone through the process, and I completely understand why he was saying that, because there's going to be a different answer for every team, and you just kind of have to figure out what works for you based on what's out there. And the thing is, it's a lot more work at the beginning. So you're taking on a major shift, and you're trying to figure out all the integrations and the notifications and the trial and error. But that's just the upfront cost of your time and your resources, mostly time and energy. But it all pays off downstream.
And probably also the truth is there are multiple tools that would work for whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Somebody does have a question about what programs people use to design magazines. Christina's not a designer, but she's willing to learn, but is concerned about Adobe's steep learning curve. I would not use Microsoft Word or Microsoft Publisher to design a magazine, but I know some people do. But is this a place to get into that, or is there a good resource you could say of where to find this?
Public Media Stack. You Google Public Media Stack. There's lots of different tools out there. There's also lots of open source tools. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is build a community where we can all share these kinds of ideas. So again, let's have a conversation with Tim. I want to use the time for questions to Cassie. Is there any other questions for Cassie at this point?
So sure. There's a question. The folks at CNS, Carol in Rome, welcome, Carol. It's evening for you there. They've already been going from idea to content, but she wants to know what ideas or suggestions you have for greater efficiency in communication. Cassie, you mentioned that communication efficiency went up. Idea brainstorming, tracking progress on all media, where each element is throughout the day and days.
Yeah, so some of the things that we do is when we have a project template. So for instance, let's say our magazine, we do for a year, and we already have templates for the upcoming issues coming this year that we're not working on currently. So if someone has an idea, there's just a spot in the template where we can just write down the note. And that is way easier for us than emails and things like that. Keeps it all in the same place, and it's also something that everyone can access. I'm sorry, what were some of the
how do you do idea brainstorming, and you're addressing that? How do you track the progress?
Sure. So what we do at Glenmary is we track progress by having folders within the Google Drive. But this is similar, just like any file management you use. It's like a parent folder, and then within the parent folder there'll be maybe a rough draft article. Then there'd be maybe there's an intermediate folder where you're sharing, and it's like a working, maybe the writer is working with the editor and they're going back and forth. And then there'll be a third folder that says, ready for InDesign, that's what we use, or ready for publish, whatever it is, whether it's print or, I guess if whatever works best. Once a document goes into that finalized folder, then that's the cue for me as the designer that 99% of that text shouldn't change very much after this point.
Okay. We have a question coming about applying paragraph styles to that are going to be applied in InDesign. Does that get done in Word? Does that get done in Google Docs? The concern is that if somebody's working with Microsoft Teams or Google Docs, that the styles might not carry forward into InDesign. Gretchen, Cassie, what experience have you had with that?
Actually, Kilian, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, go for it, Kilian.
Universally, there's plenty of ways to do it. You can use the styles that are in Google Sheets to apply this, but I don't want to get too caught up in the details. We can certainly talk about tools. You can reach out to people for the tools. The key is try it. Take an article, try to import it. All these tools are free of a demo, whatever tools you're looking at, and you can try it. That is the key part. Learn to experiment with it, and then learn from doing. Fun. Well, it actually can be a lot of fun. It's just that you have to do it yourself. Chris,
process is important.
We have one more question because Tim and I still need to finish up here.
Correct. I just wanted to let people know if there are any more questions to do that, but we do need to save time at the end for a few closing comments. And so if there aren't any more questions, I don't see anything else coming in. Kilian, I think I'll throw it back to you and Tim.
Okay. Thank you so much. Cassie, that was wonderful. Gretchen, incredible sharing. And thank you for sharing what you've got. Can you all see my screen? I've just switched to purple.
Yes.
Wonderful. So what do these examples, three examples have in common? They all had board support. They all had leadership that was committed to the change. They committed resources. They were willing to change, and they trusted their people would and could change. Okay, there's a key part, right? The leadership has to, Gretchen said, I trust you. What you come up with, you will do. And to watch that trust in action and what the effect it has while Gretchen was gone, to see that effect on people is really amazing. Gretchen wasn't there, and I could tell you when I watched them, they figured it out. The teams were willing to change and experiment. They had this in common. They learned to trust each other, and they agreed on which tools it was. Not everyone's happy with every tool. but you have to agree that you're going to try something together. So what ends up happening, everyone has to compromise a little bit, but also the people who don't necessarily have technical skills, they can learn them. I've worked with people who are 80 years old who are learning skills. There's no reason that we can all learn new ways, but you might have to be patient because machines and all those things are hard to understand at first, but you have to get there. They learn to manage their own workflows. Here's the key part. There was a question from Rome, I believe, about how you did things, how you track things, right? If you're managing your own workflows, suddenly, if someone says, hey, I can't do this, your editorial team can fix it. Before, you had to go to your IT department and have them fix it for you. And often what it meant, you never changed anything. What ends up happening now is you can see it and you can fix it right away and you try it right away and you learn quickly. Individuals, and there's a commitment, you learn technical skills as needed to increase baseline competence. You basically learn it as you go. And basically everyone has to raise their level just a little bit. And we can't, look, sometimes there's a culture of nice in the Catholic community. It's wonderful. Everyone wants to take care of everybody else. But here's the key part. Sometimes you're not helping someone by letting them continue with email or write on paper. Everyone needs to learn the new tools. And it's respect for them, respect for people to help them through that. And sometimes it's not comfortable, but you have to help everyone learn a little bit more and be able to do it themselves. And so workflow. And the thing I wanted to share was, if you look at these 6 different workflows, Cassie shared about article workflows and issue workflows, how you can build those themselves. Gretchen, when I was out with OCV, Gretchen's team figured out data, how to do plan versus actual, what worked. We talked about email newsletters. We talked about what works, what doesn't. We talked about your audience. What are you looking for in your audience? How to figure that out. And America, we talked about how they've created new products, including podcasts and all those other things, and also generating new ways of creating revenue. And the amazing thing was, when I talked with OSV and talked these things, we looked at these 6, and this creates a full picture for what is needed to be able to become a forward-thinking, digital, flexible organization like OSV, America, and Glenmary. These 6 things in a row. So, last year, when I was in St. Petersburg, there was a row of Post-its, and I asked everyone, today would be successful if we did this. This Post-it killed me. It slayed me. I remember how open people were to write down saying, I need to save my newspaper. It meant a lot for me. When I saw that, I was in front of 95 people when I was only expecting 25, and I was just, oh my God, I have such a responsibility. We have responsibility to each other. Save my newspaper. I believe, and you're not alone. Catholic community is not alone in this. We're all, outside the public square, as Bishop Teague talked yesterday, we're all part of this. And Save My Newspaper is a key part. And learning how to manage your own processes is a key part to growing. So the other thing is, when we had all these conversations, Tim and I have been thinking about, well, the biggest problem is, when I was working with Gretchen and with the CPA, is that I have to pay for a single day rate. And so its consulting can be expensive and can require a lot of resources. And Tim and I thought about what was possible. Maybe there's another way of doing things. So we've gone back and forth. We did a couple experiments with trying a single hour, which I think Cassie Magnotta used. And that seemed to work pretty well. And Chris Gunty as well. And there was other folks, I think Barb is on this call, are doing it. And Tim and I talked some more, and I think we've come together with a program that will show how to do all 6 of those in a short amount of time and a short amount of resources. So Tim, I'll leave it to you. I can move the screen.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here and seeing so many interested and engaged members in this process, and really getting a sense, as both Gretchen and Cassie said, the benefits of being in the association is the shared information and the ability to reach out to each other and ask for assistance to learn things. So one of the things I did forget to mention at the very beginning of the show is that when the annual report gets released this year, you will get to see firsthand the design skills of Cassie. So she did the design on the CPA's annual report, and that will be available in PDF format coming up soon. So thanks a lot, Cassie. The other thing is that I firmly believe that this pandemic, one of the things it did is it highlighted the fact that we are at a time of change. And the change is not because we're working at home, but because production processes are changing. And I've never been a writer. I'm an old grade school teacher who became the executive director of the association after selling advertising and managing circulation for 19 years at a Catholic newspaper. But I firmly believe that all of our members are at a position today where what we just talked about is where we need to be as an association in the next 5 years. And because of that, the Catholic Press Association made a commitment just prior to the pandemic to invest in Kilian skills and offer a select amount of members an hour of training, nearly a $250 value that the association underwrote to help people become aware of these production and workflow processes. So a lot of people took that course. We still have some hours available. I think about a half a dozen may be available through that. But what transitioned from that was the realization that we needed to help people actually implement this process and integrate their production and their workflow process. So what has come out of that, and I guess, Kilian, we should probably flip the slide, is I reached out to the Catholic Communications Campaign, which has funded our integrated communications consultations for the last 5 years. We have funded about $300,000 of projects into dioceses to help them with their communications plan. And they have agreed to allow us to use our last $25,000 to implement the digital transformation seminar series. So what we are offering right now is we have the opportunity for about a dozen organizations to take grant-supported training, partnering with PurpleGray for a 13-week online course. The purpose of this course is to help the 6 or 7 organizations. That's fine, Kilian. I can follow through that. In a 13-week period, all 7 or 6 or 7 groups will start at the same time. We'll take the course together. You'll have one-to-one training with Kilian, and then an additional session that where the group gets together and shares their ideas. This is a $2,000 project that is being funded by the Catholic Communications Campaign, and the grant is covering at least $1,500 of the organization. We are asking our partners or our members to contribute $500. I will say out front, because of the pandemic, I've talked to a few dioceses who may actually have a problem coming up with that $500. And if that's the case, I'd like you to have a private conversation with me, and I'll see if there are some other underwriting available for you to take this course. I will be frank and say that the first group of people that took the hour training, that took us up on that, will be the first people that I will offer this course to. And then we're going to have a second session that will start, I think this first session will start in July, and another session will start in August. So what I'm saying rather unsuccinctly right now is that we have $25,000 available in $1,500 allotments to help somewhere between 12 and 16 dioceses get the training that has moved OSV and Maryknoll and American Media into the forefront of publication that they're doing. The other thing yeah, thank you. It's one of the things that makes me really excited about being the executive director, is offering these kind of programs and these kind of services for our members. And what Chris Gunty mentioned at the forefront of this program, and I just want you to think of 3 seminal publications that you've known outside of the Catholic press. The Rolling Stone, boy, did I ever grow up with that, and probably Cassie. Thanks to them, I found out about the band. So if you travel at all, you've read Condé Nast magazine. and you've looked at the graphics and the production process there. And if you love national magazines, you've read The New Yorker and looked at The New Yorker. And the person that we have accessible to us and to help you is a person that transformed those three major secular publications and two of our largest media publications in our association, OSV and American Media, and that Cassie has also grabbed onto. So this to me is an unprecedented opportunity for CPA members to make a quantum leap in their production process. And it's not just about changing how you do things, it's a cultural change in your workflow and your organizational mindset that I believe is going to be necessary in order to free up your time. Remember, years ago, oh, I'm sorry, but my cat wanted to say hello. Jumps on my lap. It's Bosley, he's 15. This opportunity will help you not only just change your workflow, but make life possible for you to do all the things that you want to do digitally. Get your website ready, have social media products be posted, and develop newsletters, which are becoming one of the most influential ways of reaching people, not just in the publication world, but also in the parish world. So for your assistance, you can reach out to me. Everybody has my information at the Catholic Press Association. I haven't put this up here, but it's available for you. And I will connect you with Kilian for a 1-hour awareness program and talk to you about your eligibility to take the training program. So that's it for me. This session is about 3 minutes over time, but if you would like to stay on and if Chris could facilitate it, Kilian and I have offered to stay on and answer some specific questions about the program. And all of you know how to reach out to Cassie and Gretchen for additional information on their program. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference as well. That's been a great project, and I'm extremely proud of my staff for making this happen, as well as Amy Koala and JD Long Garcia, your president and vice president. So thanks a lot, everybody.
We are very grateful to Tim, you and your staff, and to Amy and the national team for pulling this together. A few weeks ago, the idea of doing a virtual conference was a bit scary, and with our weekly meetings, we've made it happen. So thank you very much. Thank you to our presenters, Gretchen, Cassie, and Kilian. We appreciate all of your work on that. Remember that we will be recording this and saving the chat. Those records will be up later in the week. Probably, I guess, not until early next week, but they will be available at some point if you want to go back and do that. Just a reminder that the Foley Award video will start, is now available. If you go to YouTube, you probably got an email from the CPA today about that. You can go and see that as soon as we get off of this session. If there are a few people who would like to stay on, who would like to chat specifically with Tim and Kilian about this program, I know that I've already sent them an email saying that the Catholic Review wants in on that 13-week program. We definitely want to complete the conversation that we started with Kilian. So we definitely want to sign up. If there's anybody who wants to stay on and get some specifics about that from Tim and Kilian, we do have a few minutes to do that before we move on. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. You can drop off whenever you want. We will save the chat. We will save the information for you. And we do appreciate all of you being here. I think at one point I noted we had 148 people on, which is what is that, 6 Zoom screens worth of folks. So that's a pretty big group, and we are very grateful. That's probably bigger than we could have fit into a room at the Portland Hotel. So we're glad to have you all with us today. Thank you very much. Thank you again to Cassie and Gretchen and Kilian.
Chris, if you'd like to turn over the host to me, I can let you go, and I will go unmute people who are still here, and Kilian and I can have a conversation.
And
absolutely.
And I want to say thank you to Gretchen and Cassie for all the time and the lack of sleep that they've done It's been amazing to work with them. So thank you, both of you, for pulling this together. It was amazing to watch. Thank you.
And Kilian, let's unshare the screen and go to gallery view and see if we have some people who stay around. All right?
Absolutely. Okay, I'll do that now. All right.
Thank you.
Done.
Okay, Tim is now the host, so we can you can take it from there. I will probably duck out because I need to get on the road so I can be home in time for the next session and lead it from there. I'm actually in my office today.
Great. I'm going to unmute everybody and see if we can actually manage this with the few people who are here. Maybe if we just do something really old-fashioned and you raise your hand, and I'll call on you to ask a question. How's that go? And I only have one screen, so the other option would be to send me a message in the chat that you have a question, and I can go that direction as well.
I think I did look at that, and I look at that comes with the readings for the week too. Is
I'm going to go back and mute because Rhonda's on the phone. So why don't Karen? How are you? Let me see if I can unmute you.
I did it.
You did. All right, great.
I just had a question. Is there a syllabus or an outline or something for the 13-week course? The reason I ask is we're fairly far away, far advanced on the process of all of this from a technological standpoint, but not necessarily as everybody's got their head in the game. And so I'm interested in how much is going to be on that as opposed to how much is on, platforms and whatnot and how to develop a workflow and all, because we've got the workflow. We just have people that are still stuck in a print mindset.
Okay. Tim, should I answer that or you want to answer
Yes,
it?
please. Go ahead.
Karen, to the point, the tool work is done by the teams themselves. You're doing the tool work. The processes is to help groups think about all those different steps and how everyone can contribute to it. So it's really, the discussions we're having are not going to be about which Google Doc or suite. I can answer those questions or other people can answer those questions. The key part is the transformation you do inside as your team and as individuals. And that's the 6 experiments that we're going to be going through every 2 weeks will basically enable your team to force them to learn from experiment. Basically, it's based around workflow experiments. When Cassie did the template, it was a trial. She started off very small. When Gretchen's team started the articles, they started off one article on one editorial. And that's the key part, is that when you do that, the teams can learn as it goes. And I would say if you have the tools, great, because we can have a conversation, we can adjust the tools, and we're not going to be spending time on that. We can spend time on getting the team engaged and getting everyone moved on. So I'm happy to, the 6 that you saw, that's the sequence. One after the article, issue, I should know them all now, but it's a product, revenue, and then data and audience.
Okay.
In that sequence, basically leads us to where America is and where OSV is and where Glenmary is going to be. And that's what we're trying to do. I see Barb. Hi, Barb.
We're in, Tim.
Great, Barb.
Any other questions? Or maybe put the questions in chat. You can also put the questions in chat.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, Barb. All right. Thank you. So anyone else? Tim or Barb?
Barb has her hand up. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try unmuting now. I'm going to find Rhonda and just mute her out. So.
Okay.
Rhonda, can you mute your? Hold it. I got her muted.
So I can speak.
You can talk, Barb.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, great. I very much want to be part of this seminar. I just think this would be so really important. A couple of my staff are kind of like dragging their feet because they say, well, we don't have InDesign, we don't have cloud, and they're creating all kinds of obstacles, but I think I need for them to be a part of this. I told them you can't keep doing the same thing the same way and expect different results. And they said, well, things are working the way we're doing them. No, they're not. We need to change. And I'm the oldest one of the group, and I want to do this.
Okay. One thing.
So help me.
Yes, I will be happy to. One thing I should share is that Barb and I had a dinner the day of the Catholic Media Conference in St. Petersburg. My flight got canceled and moved, and Barb hosted me. And it's one of the things that has inspired me to try to work so hard, because hearing Barb talk about what it was like to be working every day on her newspaper and sharing with the community was inspiring. And if you ever have a chance to hear her talk about her history, you should listen. And I am looking forward to working with you, Barb. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Oh, great.
Anyone else? Questions, thoughts? Tim, I see Marnie. Is that all right, Marnie?
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to respond to a chat question, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cassie. That was really great. I'd love to ask you something offline sometime, just about design and collaboration with editorial. But Kilian, this is really exciting. We developed back in 2015. We just still didn't have a website, and I was pretty frustrated by that. So I created a free WordPress site and went to my supervisor and said, "This is free. Could we just upload our stories to this and just share them on social media from there?" And they said, "It's free?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Okay." So that's how we got online initially. And we've never put in much budget or, and we never hired, we've not done anything with our staff to change any of that. So we did finally build a website, and put a little money toward that about 3 years ago. So we've never done anything major to support our web. So workflow, we just try to figure out how to change our workflow on the fly. And part of our staff was really into it and excited about it. And part of our staff is like, we're a newspaper. And that's what we do, darn it. And so I'm really excited about the prospect of this, because I think we need a cultural mindset change. And as much as we can try to do that on the fly within ourselves, I think we need that excitement that comes from the outside. I think even just watching this seminar together would help.
You know, those people who say we're a newspaper, I always have this visualization of the white life raft or light rescue thing that was on the USS Minnow. Only it's people who say, but we're just a newspaper, this is the way, and they're floating in the water, and that says, but this is the way we've always done it, okay? The truth of the matter is you're not just a newspaper anymore. We're all multimedia publishers. Yeah. We're all putting things on the website. We're all putting things in newsletters. We're all doing multiple things. And it's part of the reason the CPA is getting ready to change its name from the Catholic Press Association to the Catholic Media Association.
Yeah.
So
well, the good thing about that is that for the past 3 years, I'd say we have been digital first. We do some stories that are web only. We do breaking news. You know, we have done it, but it hasn't been easy. And only some of us are involved in that. It's just been a kind of a partial effort. And we really need to find a way, instead of saying, can you proofread this? It needs to go online. I want a formal process. You know, we need to actually institute it rather than on the fly.
Marnie, can I add something to what you just said?
Please, yes.
Your team believes in your newspaper, right? They care. They care. And that's the key. If you have a team that cares, they will figure out a new way. Often the people who are blocking the most are because, hey, we're threatening is good. We're threatening what is working.
Yeah, I'm just listening. I'm going to get out of this.
When you get them over, then they actually start becoming engaged. And I would really, what's funny is that the people who are most resistant sometimes are the ones who become the most excited. And that watching that process happen is really enjoyable. And it's a little thrilling. It's a little scary sometimes. But Cassie, I mean, I hear stories about what you've done, and there's an initial fear everyone has to go through. You're trying something new. And what ends up happening is, because it's an experiment, you're just trying, nothing's going to go wrong. Mm-hmm. You're just trying something. It's basically like Broadway. When you do a Broadway show, you know, or doing theater, it's not, what we're doing is not movies. We're doing theater. Movies, you do it once, you build it ahead of time, you have all these things, and you build a movie. We're doing theater. We have to rehearse. We have to check things out. We have to fix our lights. We have to do our stops, our gaps, all those things you have to do in the theater. You're rehearsing the team. You're building out how you're going to work together. And then you do previews. Now, you don't have to do all those steps, but you're building a team. That's what this is about. It's not about building tools. It's about building the team. And that's watching teams grow from the experiments they do together is one of the best things about doing this. And that's why I love doing this work.
One of the things I think, I'll turn this over to you, Cassie, is that watching this and looking at your template, telling freelancers, this is how many characters you want in an article. This is how many characters in a headline. Those kind of things train people to do things efficiently. And that is what the major time savers of this whole process is. And my friends know that I'm also a part-time musician. I've been a musician all my life. And I also taught myself to play golf. And one of the things that made me interested in golf was the first time I went out to play with some friends. I was never so nervous in my entire life as I was standing in front of 3 friends and 10 people waiting to tee off, trying to hit that darn little white ball. And I thought, if that can make me that nervous, there's got to be something to this in terms of control, discipline, learning, and getting past that fear to enjoyment. And after being a musician for 50 years, I still get anxious when I get in front of an audience, but I love that feeling because I know where it's going to go next. And that's what Cassie has really done and what Gretchen has done. And this is what Kilian is saying about experimenting. Experiment. There's joy in learning. That's what we're trying to offer. Cassie?
Yeah, I had a thought as we were talking about this, that I think that this discussion kind of has a twofold answer. One is the very practical of some actual tools of, you know, I mean, so my coworker is like 2 blocks over on the video. I see you. But, you know, it's not always perfect. And we do have, you know, within our communications group, but even more so within Glenmary in general, there are some people who are just, you know, they aren't as flexible. But when we come together in the beginning and you have no, not him, but when we have if you have, let's say you make a template, or let's say you make a calendar, like for the month, you say, I'm going to do this many web stories, this many social medias, whatever. If you do it as a group at one time and everyone is kind of on board, then whoever is like the squeaky wheel to make it happen, to say, oh, hey, like I'm trying to post a social media, like you got the post ready for me. It takes the emotion out of it because we've already planned it. And so that has been helpful for us, as just like a practical tool of helping people who aren't as on board with it just be accountable. But then secondly, something that I think is kind of like really special about Catholic media is, you know, I think that our world in general has pressures that wants us to say it's us first, like it's me first. I'll be successful if I elevate my position. I'll be successful if I personally have a bigger paycheck, etc. But probably none of us are working in the positions we are in because we're getting a really big paycheck. It's all nonprofits. So the whole point of this is that we have a different source to pull from. And, you know, I know it's not as tangible and it's not as easy to put into play, but, you know, this is something I think everybody struggles with. What if everyone in the Catholic media like said a prayer every day for open minds and open hearts and workflow change? I really do think that it's the Lord's will that we would be the most creative. Like, he's the creator, like creative ideas come from him. But honestly, faith-based media is not leading in our world. So we can change that, you know, and it's not like we want faith-based to be like better than someone else. It's just there's enough for everyone. So those are my 2 cents about that.
I couldn't agree with you.
Why don't you make this closing remark?
Okay, Cassie, what you just said, articulated, I work with the commercial media and I work with the secular media and work with different groups. And there's something that you share. I've learned from working with the Catholic group, one, prayer, power of like, if you're starting a meeting, I would have team meetings and it would just take forever for everyone to get aligned. I come to America and I remember they had a prayer and the whole team just aligns up immediately. This is what we're doing. And so I put prayer on every agenda. Going forward, I was just like, I would call someone in the meeting, just have a prayer. I learned that. The other thing that I find is amazing, but the Catholic community has is you don't have to worry about antitrust. You can share everything. You trust each other. You could share how you do things. You can share what best practices are, what worked for you, you can share all those things. And many of the communities I work with elsewhere don't have that opportunity. And you have that opportunity. So I think one of the things that we'll grow towards is building a community where all the workflow discussions, once you're able to build your own, you can start sharing with others. And the key is to learn how to build your own. Once you know how to build your own and you can manage your own issues, own questions, you can then adjust to whatever your audience wants. Because here's the key thing. We were talking about being a newspaper, Tim, right? How it was difficult to, for groups who are feel like they're a newspaper to feel like they can do anything else. Well, I remember back when I was at the New Yorker and NewYorker.com was starting to become a thing. And I remember the editor-in-chief saying to the team, guys, the website is between the pages. It matters. And everyone's like, well, no.
Uh-oh, you just froze.
.com. People don't say, oh, it's from .com. They say, and so they learned that. Audience probably sees you just not in your paper form or your digital form or Facebook, whatever. They just see you as the name. Cassie, they just see you as Glenmary. They just see Our Sunday Visitor. They just see America Media. They don't see print, digital. They think it's all the same thing. And that is a change of thought and a change of mindset. But you have to experiment your way. And you also have to believe that the people who have been building it up till now know how to build quality, know how to build headlines, know how to connect with their readers and community. And they are best equipped to build a workflow that will take that organization forward. Thank you.
All right, well, great. I'm going to call an end to this 2-hour program today. But what a fantastic program. Thanks a lot for everybody. I put my email address in the chat room to reach out to me if you're interested in the training. I'm going to be mostly in CMC mode this week, but next week I'll get to those and reach out to you and we can have some discussion. Okay? Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your conference.
Guys.
Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.
See you.
Thank you.